The state of Oregon could soon be under a statewide fentanyl emergency as overdoses there soar to record levels. Some are blaming a first-of-its-kind law which partly decriminalized possessing certain drugs. Oregon saw the sharpest increase in overdose deaths from synthetic opioids in the U.S. after the legislation took effect.
Morning, everybody. I am RJ, and this is Crazy News Reacts, where I scour the web for the weirdest, strangest, and most crazy stories around. And I bring them to you every day at midnight. Today, we're dealing with the decriminalization of drugs in some parts of the country, and then ultimately the recriminalization, which means we're back to square one. Take a look.
It's the middle of the day in downtown Portland, Oregon.
You mind holding up for a second?
We're on a ride-along with Portland Police Bike Squad.
All right, don't worry about that other thing, all right? You're just going to take it today.
Block after block, foil, syringes, and used Narcan canisters litter the streets. The sight of open fentanyl use is inescapable.
What did you see that warrants a citation?
He was smoking drugs on the sidewalk.
23-year-old Milo McPherson is not facing arrest or criminal prosecution for openly smoking fentanyl. Instead, Portland police officer David Baer hands McPherson a $100 citation.
Because you're going to call one of these numbers.
Excellent.
Do the drug screen, they'll pay the ticket for you, and if you want treatment, then give you treatment, okay?
Under Oregon's Drug Addiction Treatment and Recovery Act, drugs are decriminalized statewide in an effort to instead help addicts with treatment.
Everyone has Narcan? $100 fine. Smoking fentanyl in public, don't worry about that. And they're going to either offer you treatment or at least pay the fine for you.
But calling the help hotline is voluntary, frustrating Portland law enforcement.
Put your hands behind your back.
They say without the threat of jail and fentanyl's addictiveness, there isn't a real incentive for people to seek treatment.
The real problem is that the streets become filthy when you have a large amount of people who are homeless living on them streets. What happens is the cities don't come down there to clean the sidewalks or streets anymore. They kind of turn their head and lift their nose. Addicts are not going to pay a fine. Every dime they get goes to drugs. How do I know? Because I've been there. I've told you guys a million times. When I was an addict as a young man, I didn't care about anything except the next fix. And as for getting a fine, are you kidding? I wasn't able to buy food because I was so addicted. I was living on the streets. I would go to Salvation Army for help, and they would make me go to church in order to get a meal and a cut, which I still think is very arrogant. And as for the cops not being happy, they never approve of any law that legalizes any drug. Why? Because they want to lock you up. So instead of treatment, Oregon now is jailing and sending to prison addicts who will do their time, get out, and repeat the cycle because they have not received help or treatment in jail. There's no corrections in prison.
What sort of an impact has 110 had on what you do out on the street every day?
My full-time job is fentanyl, and basically all roads lead to fentanyl in downtown Portland.
Since Measure 110 took effect nearly 3 years ago, more than 6,000 citations have been filed, and 64% have been ignored.
The vast majority of people that get those tickets, they just throw them away.
A coalition of police chiefs, donors, and district attorneys are now calling for the recriminalization of drugs, along with adding diversion programs within the criminal court system.
We don't want to double down on something that's failing. We've had 3 years of this law that has not delivered on the promise that voters thought they were getting.
Including Washington County DA Kevin Barton.
People in these social services programs will say the process of putting someone in jail is part of the harm that they're trying to reduce.
Friends, is a very good analogy. Putting people in jail or prisons because they have a drug problem is ridiculous. That's why our prison population ballooned to more than 2 million people. So to recriminalize drugs is the easiest way for the county to just sweep it under the rug. Instead of seeing people on the streets, they'll be in the jail laying on the floors. And they're not willing to double down, but they are willing to double down on recriminalization, even knowing that the jails will overflow, which right now can't even handle the people they have. The promise the county made to citizens is that less people would be in jail and that these addicts would have the freedom to kill themselves if they want.
Oregon lawmakers walking back their controversial drug leniency policy, voting to recriminalize certain drugs. This after overdose deaths skyrocketed in the state, with Portland becoming an epicenter of the fentanyl crisis.
And it turned into a exponential increase in overdose deaths, and it's now about 4 Oregonians a day are dying. Reversed that policy and voted to recriminalize drugs and end Oregon's experiment with decriminalization of drugs.
Let's stay on the experiment for just a moment. We've seen the stats on the rise in overdose deaths. I'm just curious, from a quality of life perspective, at the point at which you decriminalize all these hard drugs, and we should point out that's different than legalization. It's not as though you had dispensaries pop up overnight, but you're not prosecuted for a certain amount of anything, though, heroin, crack, whatever. So what happened to the streets of, say, Portland?
So, you know me, I'm going to be real with it, right? Let's talk about the numbers. In Oregon, in 2019, there were 280 overdoses. In 2023, there were 1,049, a huge increase. Creating these so-called rewards and consequences over drugs is idiotic, and I'll tell you why. You cannot put a drug addict in treatment until they are ready, until they are sick and tired of being sick and tired. Treatment does not work for addicts who all they want to do is get out and use again. And that's proven because we know 47% of the country's prison system is due to drugs. And there are more than 578,000 people in U.S. prisons and jails for simple possession. Imagine where that's going to go now by recriminalizing. Let people kill themselves if they want. Stay out of their business. This is America, land of the free. Let them kill themselves. Why do you constantly want to have a war on drugs when you know you cannot win it?
More crime, open drug use, open drug sales, and I mean, you see people pretty much everywhere on drugs, and they were literally dying before our eyes on the streets of Portland and Eugene and Salem and major cities across Oregon, and it's been horrific.
And real quick, now the attempt, as you point out, to rewind this, to recriminalize these drugs, what does that prospect look like now?
Well, the great news is Oregonians, I think, won on Friday when the state Senate voted by 21-8 to recriminalize hard drugs. The House had already voted on it. Strong bipartisan votes in both chambers, and now it's going to the governor, and I'd urge her to sign it.
That is a crazy assumption to make. People are still going to die from overdoses, whether or not you lock them up. And once again, we have a state official being untruthful. The fact of the matter is that crime in Oregon is down, not up. And this is particularly true in Portland, where they're trying to tell you things are worse. In 2023, there were 9,700 violent crimes, which includes murder, rape, kidnapping, things like that. And that was a 5% decrease over 2022. The crime most associated with drug addicts is property crimes. From 2022 to 2023, those crimes dropped by 13%. In fact, Oregon doesn't even make the top 10 list for the most dangerous states. And they're not in the top 10 of the safest states. So like most states, they fall somewhere in the middle, which is what? Average. The most common arrests across the country, Alabama, drug arrests. In 2023, we're talking about 60,000 arrests. In Arkansas, 44,000. In California, 199,000 drug arrests. Again, drug arrests don't show up for Oregon. They aren't in the top 10. So you've just been lied to by an official of the state of Oregon. That's it, guys. Glad I was able to bring you the truth of the matter. It is unfortunate people use drugs, but they do it for a lot of different reasons. And the only way to get them off drugs is to convince them that they don't want to do it anymore. But until they hit rock bottom, all bets are off. It doesn't matter whether you put them in prison, jail, drug treatment, doesn't matter. People have to be ready. And I know this from experience. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. Hey, before you go, just hit that thumbs up, subscribe, and if you feel it in your heart, share this episode with your friends and family, because it helps me tremendously in the algorithm, which allows more people to see what you've just watched. See you tomorrow.